Have you noticed any of these signs lately? Walking into a room and suddenly forgetting why you went there? Reading the same sentence 2 or 3 times before it finally sticks? Forgetting someone's name right after they tell you? Losing your train of thought in the middle of a conversation? Feeling mentally tired before your body even feels tired? Or maybe that strange feeling people call brain fog, where your mind feels present but somehow not fully there. What if these small moments mean more than you think? Because here's something I've noticed. Most people imagine memory changes as something dramatic, something obvious, something that suddenly appears one day and changes everything overnight. But life usually doesn't work like that. The things that affect us most often arrive quietly, silently, slowly, almost politely. And for many people over 50, that's exactly how these mental changes begin. Not with some giant warning sign, not with alarms, not with a big moment where everything changes. Just tiny little moments, easy to explain away, easy to ignore, easy to blame on a busy day. And then one day you stop and think, wait a minute, has this been happening more often lately? I remember talking to a friend not long ago. He laughed and said, I walked into the kitchen 3 times this morning and forgot why I went there every single time. He joked about it. We both laughed, because honestly, almost everybody has done that. But later that same day, I started thinking about it. Not because of one moment, because of all the little moments that seem to add up. And this caught my attention because most people over 50 don't first notice memory changes through huge events. They notice them through patterns, small patterns, repeated patterns, things that seem harmless by themselves. Let's talk about the first sign: walking into rooms and forgetting why you went there. You stand up from the couch with a purpose. You know exactly what you're about to do. You walk confidently into another room, and suddenly, nothing. It's gone. You stand there looking around. You almost feel like your brain hit a reset button halfway through the trip. Then you retrace your steps. You walk back, and somehow the reason magically returns. It's so common, people joke about it all the time. But here's where things become interesting. Researchers have actually talked about something called doorway effect. Sometimes changing environments interrupts mental processes. Your brain shifts contexts, like changing tabs on a computer. And while occasional moments like this happen to everyone, some people begin noticing it more frequently as they get older. Not dramatically, just more often. And maybe you've noticed something similar. Maybe it's opening your phone and forgetting why. Maybe entering the grocery store and standing there wondering what you needed. Little interruptions, tiny mental hiccups. Nothing scary, but noticeable. Now here's something that surprised me. Many people immediately assume memory itself is failing, but sleep can play a huge role. Stress, too. Mental overload. Think about life today. Our minds rarely stop. Messages, bills, appointments, news, family responsibilities, work. Even after retirement, many people say their minds feel busier than ever, and overloaded systems don't always process information efficiently. Sometimes the brain isn't forgetting. Sometimes it never fully stored the information in the first place. And that's a very different thing. The second sign is reading things multiple times. This one feels familiar too. You sit down with a book, or maybe you're reading a message. You get halfway through a paragraph, then suddenly realize you have no idea what you just read. So you go back, read it again. Still doesn't stick. Read it a third time. Now maybe you've done this and thought, what is happening to me? I know how to read. Why am I rereading everything lately? I remember sitting with a cup of coffee one morning, reading an article online. Halfway through, I realized I'd read the same sentence 4 times. 4. Not because the sentence was difficult. Not because I was distracted by noise. My eyes kept moving, but my mind felt somewhere else. And here's the strange part. Mental attention and memory are deeply connected. If attention weakens, memory can appear weaker too. Stress can affect this. Poor sleep can affect this. Mental fatigue absolutely can. Have you ever noticed how after a rough night of sleep, everything feels harder? Names, focus, conversations, even simple decisions. Suddenly your brain feels like it's moving through mud. And many people over 50 begin noticing that recovery feels different too. When you're younger, one bad night of sleep sometimes barely matters. As we age, the brain may become less forgiving, and small things start becoming more noticeable. The third sign is forgetting names or simple words. This one can feel strangely personal. You're talking to someone you've known for years. You know exactly who they are. You know their face, their history, their personality, and suddenly, their name disappears. You can almost see it. You know it's there, but somehow you can't grab it. Or maybe you're telling a story and suddenly forget a basic word. You stop, pause, and say something like, you know, that thing you put food on, plate. You meant plate. And 5 seconds later it comes back. Everybody laughs. You laugh too. But inside, maybe a tiny thought appears. Why is this happening? And this caught my attention because people often become emotionally hard on themselves during moments like these. But word retrieval changes can happen for many reasons. Stress, mental exhaustion, sleep, routine, even lack of novelty. Sometimes life becomes so repetitive that days blend together. Wake up, eat, repeat. Same roads, same schedules, same conversations. The brain loves stimulation, movement, new experiences, learning, tiny challenges. And without realizing it, sometimes our mental worlds become smaller. Not intentionally, life simply happens. Now here's where things become interesting again. I came across something fascinating while reading about how the brain communicates. There's a compound called acetylcholine. Now don't worry, this isn't turning into a science lecture. Think of acetylcholine like a silent messenger inside the brain, like text messages moving between brain cells. Tiny signals helping communication happen, helping information move, helping messages get delivered. Researchers have spent years studying its role in memory and cognition. And, while the brain is incredibly complex, many discussions around memory eventually seem to circle back toward communication inside the brain itself. Not magic, not shortcuts, just communication. Because when communication becomes less efficient, small things may start feeling different. The fourth sign is mental fatigue before physical fatigue. This one surprised me, because people often expect physical energy to disappear first. But many people describe the opposite. Their body feels okay, but mentally, done. Completely done. You wake up feeling normal. You start your day. Maybe run errands, talk to family, answer messages, handle responsibilities. And then by early afternoon, your brain feels exhausted. Not sleepy, mentally tired. Like thinking itself suddenly feels heavier. Decision-making feels harder. Concentration drops. Even simple conversations require more effort. I remember hearing someone describe it perfectly. My body wanted to keep going. My brain wanted to sit in a dark room. That stayed with me, because so many people quietly experience this, and they blame themselves. They think they're becoming lazy or losing motivation. But stress accumulates, mental overload accumulates, life accumulates, and recovery matters. Movement matters too. Not intense exercise necessarily, just movement, walking, fresh air, changing environments. The brain seems to love movement more than many of us realize. Sometimes a 10-minute walk changes everything, not because it fixes life, but because the mind finally gets space. Space to breathe, space to reset. And then comes the fifth sign, feeling mentally slower than before. This one can be hard to explain because you're still you. You still know things. You still understand things. but something feels different. Maybe you need a little more time. Maybe multitasking feels harder. Maybe conversations move faster than you'd like. Maybe you find yourself saying, I know this, give me a second. Not because information disappeared, because retrieving it feels slower. And here's the strange part. Many people describe this quietly, almost secretly, because nobody wants to say out loud, I don't feel as mentally sharp lately. But far more people experience this than most realize. Far more. Now, somewhere along the way, I became curious, because I kept seeing discussions around memory support and cognitive health. Not miracle promises, not overnight transformations, just conversations, ingredients researchers frequently discuss, things commonly associated with memory support. And eventually I started noticing names appearing repeatedly. Choline, DMAE, B vitamins, phosphatidylserine, huperzine, different articles, different discussions, different places, same ingredients appearing over and over. And eventually, I came across something called Neurozoom, not because someone was aggressively pushing it. Actually, the opposite. It simply caught my attention because of the combination itself, because it included several ingredients often associated with memory, focus, mental clarity, and cognitive support. That stood out to me. Not because anyone can promise miracles, and certainly not because one product changes everything. Life doesn't work that way. Sleep matters, stress matters, movement matters, recovery matters, routine matters. Everything works together. But I found it interesting that certain ingredients kept appearing repeatedly in conversations around cognitive health. And that made me pay attention, because sometimes curiosity begins with patterns, not conclusions. Patterns. And maybe that's really what this entire conversation has been about. Patterns. Not fear, not panic, not assuming the worst, simply noticing. Because big changes rarely begin looking big. They usually start small, very small. Walking into rooms and forgetting why. Reading things twice. Forgetting names. Losing thoughts. Feeling mentally tired. Feeling mentally slower. Little signals. Tiny whispers. Easy to ignore. Until one day they happen often enough that you notice. And noticing isn't weakness. Paying attention isn't fear. It's awareness. Because sometimes the body whispers before it ever shouts. And maybe these little moments aren't telling you something terrible. Maybe they're simply reminders. Reminders to slow down, to rest, to sleep, to move, to recover, to take care of the mind that's carried you through every chapter of your life. I'm curious now, have you experienced brain fog lately? Mental fatigue? Reading things twice? Forgetting names? I'd really like to hear your experience in the comments because I think many people quietly go through these things and assume they're alone. And often they aren't. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me today, and I'll see you in the next video.